with that, how about we turn our attention to this week's opponent? It is Opposing Views, presented by State Farm, an in-depth look at the Baltimore Ravens coming up here this weekend. And, of course, the Ravens, I don't know if they were the surprise team of week one, but certainly one of the surprise teams, just because 59 points not only set a franchise record for the Baltimore franchise, but they just obliterated the Dolphins in Miami 59-10. Not only the 59 points a franchise high, but their total yardage was a franchise high, and certainly Lamar Jackson was outstanding alongside Mark Ingram, Mark Andrews. They were offensively, they were clicking in every phase.
Yeah, tough to stop, and they ran a fake punt when they were up like 35-3 or something like that. I'm surprised they showed it, but now it's on film. You got to defend it. You know, when the schedule comes out, of course, for us, we always look for who you open up with, maybe primetime games, who do you finish with, when's the bye week. When teams get their schedule, they know they got to play in Florida in the month of September, hot and humid. And you got Jacksonville, obviously Tampa, and the Dolphins. So the fact that they went down there, I don't know if you can duplicate this. Obviously, you're facing a different opponent, but I think they're going to be jacked up because this is their home opener.
Yeah, the numbers were just eye-opening for what this Ravens offense did. Lamar Jackson, 324 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. In fact, he had 2 more touchdowns than he had incompletions, a perfect passer rating, and named the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. His favorite target was a local kid, tight end Mark Andrews, who went to Desert Mountain High School, starred at Oklahoma, and now doing good things with the Ravens. He had touchdowns of 47 and 83 yards, 4 catches total. That was Marquise Brown's numbers, but Mark Andrews certainly had over 100 yards receiving, but Marquise Brown in his NFL debut, 4 catches, but 2 of them for touchdowns, and the 2 touchdowns, I mean, just watching the highlights back, we knew he was fast, but he looked extremely fast.
You talk about a return on investment. He played 8 snaps. He played 8 snaps.
You know what that is? That is making the most of your opportunity.
Well, there was talk about his foot.
Yes.
Obviously, he missed some time in the offseason, but there's a reason why they were able to select him. But 8 snaps he had. That's pretty remarkable. Now he's on film, so he may not be that wide open. But again, Andrews, Boyle, Hayden Hurst, you got to make sure you put a hat on those guys, because when you tell me those numbers, it looks like yards after catch.
That's true. And then don't forget about the running game. They added Mark Ingram in the offseason, a good free agent pickup, and he had over 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. So you had a 300-yard passer, 2 receivers over 100 yards, and then a running back over 100 yards.
Well, that's why they put up 59 points. Yeah, I mean, Mark Ingram, good pickup. Obviously, Alvin Kamara's the main guy now in New Orleans, and he's a downhill runner. He's not very tall, but he's physical. He's like a fire hydrant running through that line. So I got to think we're going to see 2 tight ends, possibly 2 receivers, and then Mark Ingram. And they have a couple backups, and they use the fullback too. So maybe on short yards we'll see that. But
that'll make Ron Wolfley happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's only a handful of teams that have fullback, but I'm sure Wolf will be happy, even though he's on the Ravens.
And we know it's the Dolphins, and there's been already a lot said about the situation going on in Miami, but you hold any team to 10 points, that says a lot. And the defense of the Ravens is getting overlooked just a little bit, but they were able to record 3 sacks. They had 8 different players with at least 1 quarterback hit, and this is a defense that is not there's missing Terrell Suggs. Obviously, that's a big loss. And then, they added Earl Thomas, their big free agent pickup. He had an interception on Sunday. And then, of course, a familiar name and face, Tony Jefferson, starring in that Ravens secondary.
Yeah, I mean, you start looking at that secondary, and we don't know the availability of Jimmy Smith. He was a 2011 first-round pick, but they have Marlon Humphrey. He was a 2017 first-round pick. They signed Earl Thomas to a free agent contract in the offseason. Tony Jefferson was an undrafted free agent, played well enough to secure him an opportunity in Baltimore. You look at their line, Brandon Williams, Michael Pierce, Pernell McPhee. Linebackers aren't household names, but obviously when you got those big guys up front, it's going to take a lot of pressure off them. But I think this is a much tougher test against their secondary, because we talked about Diggs and Slay last week. I think they have 3 or 4 guys across the board in that secondary.
Well, Smith did not practice on Wednesday, and according to Harbaugh, he's going to miss, quote, a couple of weeks, but that's all we know about the knee injury. And then The backup is a second-year player out of Alabama, Anthony Averett, who has good speed, excellent speed, and is not too bad. I mean, as far as height-wise, he's 5'11", so he's touching 6 feet. And you mentioned it. I mean, you focus on Smith, but they do have some depth, and it's going to be a big test for Kyler Murray and then those receivers of the Cardinals to gain some separation.
Yeah, and again, I think if you try to spread them out, now you're talking that third or fourth corner going against maybe a Christian Kirk or a Keyshawn Johnson or a Michael Crabtree. I don't have any idea how much he's going to play, but it sounds like he's going to be active on game day. So, again, that to me, I think you can, if you try to spread them out, but I would come out, with trying to run the football first. I mean, he said it was a little too cute, and maybe because he watched so much stuff in the offseason, he was trying to be perfect. But, three wide, one tight, one back. Try to get the running game going, and then if they want to start teeing off on Murray, well, we're going to throw over the top then.
You brought up the fake punt, and it was a little bit of a talking point. It was 35-3 in the second quarter when they did the fake punt, and Harbaugh was asked about it on Sunday and wanted to talk about it himself on Monday this week and explain it. And let's be clear, Miami head coach Brian Flores had no problem with it because his feeling was if they're going to do it, it's up to us to stop it. But you're up that much, and to your point, now it's on film. Do you wait to where it's not so lopsided of a score? And I realize you got an entire second half, but an interesting play call to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, the third quarter?
No, it's the second quarter. It's the first half.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure at that time Brian Flores just wanted to go into the locker room and try to regroup and make some adjustments. But, yeah, I was shocked when I was watching the game in the press box that they did that, just because that's something that obviously they were able to see on film, and he's right. Maybe a little bit coaches speak. I don't know if there was any bad blood. You got to think between the Ravens and the Patriots organization.
Yeah, does that trickle down to the
he's a disciple of Bill Belichick.
I just think
it's not fair, but listen, people are petty. Doesn't B Train say that a lot?
Yes.
Yeah. So people are petty, and we know the Ravens and the Patriots have had their side issues.
That's true. Just the 7th all-time meeting between these two teams, and the Cardinals going to Baltimore for the first time since 2011. Ravens lead this matchup 4-2, but I mean, it's because it doesn't happen a lot, different conferences, and of course, obviously, Baltimore has not been a franchise, at least with this Ravens organization, has not been a franchise for very long. But the last time these two teams met was 2015 at State Farm Stadium, and the Cardinals won that contest 26-18. So we'll see if they can't do it again and make it back-to-back wins coming up on Sunday. So that is a look at the Baltimore Ravens in this week's edition of Opposing Views. Time right now to look around the NFC West and see what the rest of the division did. And right now, MJ, the NFC West has 0 losses amongst its 4 teams.
Yeah, well, what's impressive, 2 teams went on the road and won road games. And, anytime you travel east, it's, we've gone through it for years. So impressive there. Seattle, I thought they would run away with that game, but they had a little bit of fit, but they were able to secure the victory at home.
All right, let's start with the Seahawks as they beat the Bengals 21-20. Trailed at halftime, though, 17-14, and it was up to Russell Wilson, who hit Tyler Lockett for a 44-yard touchdown on the first play of the fourth quarter and then held off Andy Dalton and the Bengals. Dalton had a career day, but credit that Seahawks defense for doing just enough to get the W.
Yeah, and Tyler Lockett, I mean, besides that catch, he didn't really do a whole lot, and he's really their focal point without Doug Baldwin there. So, it's interesting how they're going to, throw the ball around just different targets. But clearly, they're a run-first team. But anytime you can get your running backs involved in the passing game, it loosens things up for the running game.
Jadeveon Clowney in his debut, 2 tackles, a tackle for loss, a sack. It was, quote, a little rusty, unquote, after sitting out the preseason. But certainly that changes their defense this season.
I was listening to John Snyder, and the knock on Clowney is when he wants to play, he plays. When he doesn't want to play, he doesn't. And the knock all there was, don't drop him back in coverage because he struggles in coverage. Now, he was playing in a different defense where times he had to drop back. That's like asking Chandler Jones or Suggs. Now they just said, put your hand in the dirt and go after the quarterback. So I think they're playing to his strengths. I think as he gets more comfortable in that defense, you're going to see a lot more of him.
So the Seahawks win at home. They will play at the Steelers this coming Sunday. The other two teams in the division, as we talked about, both winning on the road. The Rams going into Carolina, winning 30-27. They jumped in front 13-0. We're ahead 23-10 early in the second quarter, and a lot of it was Malcolm Brown. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, and then late in the game to seal the win, they turned it over to Todd Gurley.
Interesting dynamic because he also drafted a running back, but Malcolm Brown's a guy that obviously he's played in the league, and I'm sure the fantasy people aren't happy because they're taking away Gurley had 72 yards rushing in the fourth quarter. Maybe that's what we're going to see. If they can get a lead, you would think it would be the opposite. He helps you get a lead, take him out. But obviously they're trying to preserve him for the postseason, but it's a long season.
Overall, the Rams rushed for 166 yards on 32 carries.
And Carolina was supposedly a defense that was going to stop the run and try to force the quarterback to throw some interceptions.
Rams defense, by the way, sacked Cam Newton 3 times. Sacked him 3 times in that contest.
Now I'll say Christian McCaffrey, he had a big day, so that's somebody we're going to see next week. A guy that can catch the ball in the backfield. He can receive. He's their bell cow in that offense. It'll be interesting to see how that matchup is.
Rams now will play the Saints in a rematch of the NFC Championship game. We'll see how that one.
Who's he officiating?
Yeah, exactly.
The number one crew.
The other team, the 49ers, they also won on the road at Tampa Bay, 31-17. Defense, the story for the 49ers, a pair of pick sixes, Richard Sherman and Ahkello Witherspoon, 3 total interceptions of Jameis Winston. The 49ers defense last season recorded 2 INTs all year.
And how many interceptions Richard Sherman have? As much as you and I.
Exactly.
0. Now, I listened to Bruce Arians, and he blames the receivers. They don't run the right routes. It kind of reminds me when Carson Palmer was here. But Arians did not put that on Jameis Winston. 2 pick sixes, though. Turnover ratio was 4-2. Tough to win when you give 2 pick sixes and you have 4 turnovers. And they play on Thursday night. Quick turnaround.
For the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
For the 49ers, they will travel to Cincinnati and play the Bengals. A note on San Francisco, though, running back Tevin Coleman left the game with an ankle injury. Kyle Shanahan says it's a high ankle sprain, and that's going to cost Coleman some time.
Can they get any breaks at that
Especially
running back?
that position
Jarrett
alone.
McKinnon, Matt Breida. Now, they played in Tampa. They're going to go to Youngstown to practice there because they play the Browns, I believe, this week. And then you got Carmen Policy. He's got a lot of ties there. So they're on the road back-to-back weeks. They arrived on Friday. Now they're going to be in Youngstown. They'll play the Browns, and then they'll come back home. So on paper, they've had back-to-back road games.
Yeah, it'll be a good start for the 49ers if they come back home with a 2-0 record.